Hello everyone, welcome to Healthcare and Beyond. I'm Dr. Larry Rosenberg, I'm your host, and in this program we're going to explore the huge and fascinating world of healthcare. There's just so much to talk about in healthcare these days. People are just so interested in it. And we're going to try and capture some of that enthusiasm, try and capture some of that excitement, and try and learn as much as we can in the course of this show. We have some really great guests, and there are also going to be some interesting segments that we're going to have over the course of the season. Healthcare has been on the minds of people for a long, long time, but I think never more than the present. And I think that's for a number of reasons. I think, first of all, the developments in healthcare technology, the developments in medical knowledge, the developments in pharmacology, and the developments in medical devices have brought our technological sophistication to really a pinnacle. The quality of care and the level of care that we deliver now in the United States is unprecedented, not only in this country, but really, if you think about it, in the history of Western civilization. So it's an exciting time to learn about that, and I think people are just compelled and invigorated in trying to understand that. But there's a lot of other things that we have to talk about in healthcare as well. There has been a very active and very powerful wellness movement, which includes not only nutrition and learning how to eat intelligently, learning how to manage your life intelligently, but exercise as well. And even though there is a large amount of, or I should say there's a large percentage of people who are not as healthy as they could be, I think on balance, people are, if not becoming healthier, certainly becoming aware of how to be healthier. And we're going to try and capture some of that enthusiasm as well. I also think that healthcare finance is becoming ever important, particularly with the onset of Obamacare. And we're going to talk a little bit about finance and how healthcare impacts our finances in the small world, such as our own personal finances, how it affects our pocketbook, our personal budgets, but also how healthcare affects us in the larger scale, how it affects our economy, and how our economy is in turn affected by the changes in healthcare. So a lot to talk about. A lot of fascinating topics to talk about, so please stick with us. It's going to be a great show, and we're really looking forward to sharing this time with you. Again, Larry Rosenberg here for Healthcare and Beyond. Welcome back to Healthcare and Beyond. I'm Dr. Lawrence Rosenberg, and we have another great show for you today. We met with Michelle and with Lori from the Department of Health last week, and it went so well, and we had so much to talk about that we really didn't have the time to talk about all the things, the very, very many things that they do in the Department of Health in our session last week. So Michelle agreed to come back and talk to us today, and we have a lot to talk about. Michelle, welcome back again.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show. Michelle Kleinman is from the Department of Health here in Rockland County, and we have been talking about the very many programs that the county has to offer through the Department of Health. We had talked a bit about nutrition last week, Michelle.
Yes.
And I wanted to just kind of finish off our discussion there. We are going to come back and talk about diabetes today, which is a very important topic, a very serious disease, a very serious health problem here in the United States. We're also going to talk about a very interesting program, self-management of chronic diseases. So we have a lot to talk about today. But I do want to talk a little bit about nutrition. Now, the recommendations that the USDA has for nutrition, so what we should be eating, what we should be putting into our bodies at this point, based on the latest research, there's a plate. And I want to take a look at that plate. We didn't have a chance to look at the plate last time.
I just so happened to have one.
All right, there we go. So Dee, can we just take a little look at that there? That's our... This is the, now is it called the healthy eating plate? What is it? There's a name for it.
Choose My Plate, and you can go on it online if you want to, choosemyplate.gov.
Okay. Now I know that this is the recommended distribution, if you will, of foods that the USDA recommends. So talk a little bit, Michelle, about the various food groups. and what we should be putting into those, what kind of grains, what kind of proteins we should be eating.
So some of the things that we have at the health department are some education pieces on how to make a healthier diet.
Right.
So if we look at this plate, and it doesn't have to be, this plate gives you an idea, but it really can be applied to any plate. Just making half of your plate produce.
Right.
And even the grains could, we have whole grains, but that can be a starchy vegetable, such as a sweet potato.
Right.
So if we look at fruits, vegetables, fruits, of course, are I want to say anything that has a seed. So even a tomato is a fruit, even though we consider that a vegetable.
Right. But strawberries, raspberries, bananas,
bananas,
whatever.
right?
Okay.
Vegetables, green vegetables.
Not chocolate bars. I
no. Okay. Very good. Okay. Then whole grains. Some of the whole grains, bulgur.
Okay.
And if you ask someone about whole grains, they'll always say whole wheat bread.
Right.
But that's kind of processed. So I tell people try bulgur, quinoa, farro.
Okay.
Those are some things. Protein. Protein is meat, fish, chicken, beans. It could be I say the size of the palm of your hand, and that's good for a 2-year-old, and that's good for somebody who's 100. The size of the palm of their hand for protein. And then if you want dairy, you could have at least a calcium source. It could be low-fat milk. If you wanted a side of ricotta cheese or yogurt, that's a good size for calcium too. Another calcium can be bok choy, which has a lot of calcium, which is a vegetable.
That. I don't even, I don't know what bok choy is.
You probably go out to eat once in a while for Chinese food, right?
Yeah, we have Chinese food once a year on Christmas.
So I want you to go get the bok choy the next time you go.
All right.
Okay, but you can get that at many markets.
Okay.
It's a nutrition powerhouse.
Okay.
I slice it up, I saute with a little garlic, then I hit it with a little bit of, I happen to like sherry with it, and then a tiny bit of pepper. It's delicious.
All right, so now if I remember correctly, the average recommended calorie allowance for your average adult, your average American adult, is about 3,000 calories a day, right?
How much did you say?
Is it 3,000 or 2,000?
No, it's about 2,000.
2,000 calories
Yes,
a day.
You were up.
So I'm 1,000 calories off.
Yes, I hope you're not telling everybody else this. Better what?
I'm not going to show my extra 1,000 calories a day.
But if you were Michael Phelps, then 3,000 is really nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I generally swim about 4 miles a day, so I guess I have to worry about that. No, but so if 2,000 calories a day is the average recommended daily allowance for calories, the number of calories we're supposed to be eating, so roughly, we should be having 1/4 of our calories through each one of these food groups, right? So about 1/4 of the calories through protein, 1/4 through vegetables, 1/4 through fruits.
We'd like you to have a little bit more carbohydrates.
Okay.
It depends. And if you're an athlete, maybe you would have a little bit more of something than the other, but 60% should be from carbohydrates. When I say carbohydrates, that's also a fruit or a vegetable too.
So here's the larger question, and that is a recommendation from the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, based on an awful lot of research. And I know that having just looked at this up a little bit, the Harvard School of Public Health, their nutrition program has something which is very, it's a little different, but it's basically the same thing. And I imagine that's where they probably got it from, But I guess the larger question is, why do this? What kind of health benefits are going to accrue to you if you switch to that diet? Let's suppose that I'm your average person. I've been eating, junk food and all kinds of stuff, and I'm now, in my 30s, which I am really being very fictional about this. It's really a fantasy. But suppose I switch over to this diet. Take somebody who has a traditional,
Western diet?
A traditional Western diet, and compare it with this and track them along for 30, 40 years. What's the benefit of this? What is this going to do for you? How's it going to help your body? Plain and simple.
What kind of life do you want to live? And that's the type of, do we want to look at disease? Okay. It's also, there's other things to play in it, hereditary disease, your environment. Are you doing exercise? Are you not?
Okay.
We look at how the heart is going to work, and do you want it to work harder? And then what kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to take medicine? That's not. And then also, I don't care for the word diet, even though I'm a dietitian.
Right.
What are the first 3 letters of the word diet?
Right.
I like to look at, we promote health, and we say it's a lifestyle.
Okay.
And it shouldn't be, the best diet is one that you don't know you're on.
Right.
Because that's the way you should be having. This is a guide, and I think the best thing is that it's easy.
Right.
Because I said half of what you're eating to have more produce, to have it plant-based.
Right.
Very important. And we know that we have a high incidence of chronic disease in America,
right.
Heart disease,
yes.
Diabetes,
yes.
High blood pressure, and a lot of that can be attributed to your lifestyle factors, your diet, your exercise, what you're doing, what you're not doing.
Interesting. So the effects really are throughout the entire body. It really, it affects everything. It affects your weight, affects your heart. It affects obviously, clearly, your blood sugars we're going to talk about as well. Certainly, you need to get a certain amount of calcium, otherwise it's going to affect your bones. So really everything that you do, everything that you put into your body is affected. So, it clearly makes a lot of sense to not only to start this, but to start this early. Not to start it later on down the line, when you've already developed these diseases and these problems, but to start it early so that you really, it's really almost a course in preventative health maintenance,
However, I do tell people the best time to start is sometime between yesterday and tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it can be started at any time to take the road to good health, making a healthier choice.
Right.
But yes, the earlier the better. And especially here we are in the tri-state area, we have a lot of opportunities to make healthier choices. Why? Because we have farmers markets.
Right.
We have access to some fantastic supermarkets that can offer us some great produce and some healthier choices. Plus in Rockland we have the Rockland Farm Alliance too, that has fresh local produce right here, right in our own backyard. Mm-hmm. So these are some options. You can get and you can grow your own garden. So these are things that are right here because you want the most power-packed nutrition that you can get. Yeah. But it also should taste good. I want to say that because if it doesn't taste good, you should eat and enjoy it. Yeah,
it's interesting because in taking care of yourself, there's just so much control that you have. You are, to a large extent, your health is determined by your genes.
Yes.
But there's an awful lot that you can do, with whatever you're given, to improve your health, to maintain your health. Certainly one of the things that you can do, which I'm a great believer in, perhaps not as much as a practitioner as I would like to be, but certainly exercise is paramount among that. But again, watching your diet, and really, none of this is really heroic. None of this stuff is rocket science. It's very simple, and it's really very easy. And in fact, you brought a calorie guide with you. Here's,
oh, yes.
Okay. And if you could just show that, take a look at that. This is great. I mean, to take this with you to a restaurant, to take it to the supermarket.
It fits in your pocketbook and some gentleman's back pocket. But we give this out in our diabetes prevention program to educate people that they can be in control. Because sometimes you'll look at a menu, or how many calories does that have? How many fat grams is in there, and it really is at your fingertips. This is also, you can get the app, Calorie King app too. So it's
really?
not.
Oh, so this will go on your phone as well.
Yes, that can go on your phone. Maybe you don't want to take something that heavy with you, but it's not that heavy.
So I just want to give an example here. So I'm not going to name the restaurant or the chain restaurant, but this is a very popular chain, and I'm looking under a hamburger, which is a important but probably not desirable part of my diet. And I see underneath C, so they have calories as 380 calories.
Okay, in the scheme of 2,000 calories, you could fit that in.
But it varies because I see different numbers for the hamburger there. But it also has fat content, and it also has CB as carbohydrates. So you really get a lot of information here, not only of the type of food, but actually the restaurant that you're going to. And there seems to me quite a bit of variety from restaurant to restaurant. So honestly, if you're the kind of person who likes to eat out at fast food kind of places, it's something that you really like doing and you really enjoy, which I be honest with you, I do. You can find those chain restaurants, those fast food places, which are a little bit better comparatively than the others based upon this. So again, this is not heroic measures that you're taking here. This is a very simple guide, and probably just by using this, you can probably improve the quality of your diet, 40 or 50%. At the very same places that you go to anyway. So this is a great guide,
Well, one of the things I do at the health department, which we educate people on, is to make healthy choices, but also having that eating more of the foods less processed.
Right.
So that's something that we educate people on, is how to make smarter choices in the supermarket, how to plan your meals for the day. Yeah. These are some of the things that we look at. Is if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So these are some of the things we educate in our classes.
Very important, Michelle, thank you. We've been talking a little bit about nutrition, a little bit about diet, but we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and talk about diabetes and chronic diseases. So we'll be back in just a minute. Healthcare and Beyond. I'm Dr. Lawrence Rosenberg. Today, our guest is Michelle Kleinman from the Department of Health. We'll see you in a minute.
If your kids drink 1 bottle of soda a day, they're eating 50 pounds of sugar a year. 50 pounds of sugar from just 1 soda a day. So don't drink yourself sick. Go with water, seltzer, fat-free milk, or unsweetened teas instead.
Welcome back to Healthcare and Beyond. I'm Dr. Larry Rosenberg. Today we're going to talk a little bit about diabetes, as I mentioned earlier. Diabetes is first of all, a very serious disease. It's not a disease that generally has its effects in the acute phase, but it's a disease that takes its toll over time. It's a disease that has a large footprint, and it's a disease which is a lot more common than you'd think, as we will discuss with Michelle. The last statistic that I read is that something like 20 million Americans have diabetes, and another 10 million Americans have diabetes, but they haven't been diagnosed. Chances are that the number is quite a bit higher than that, and actually speaking with Michelle earlier, the numbers seem to be quite a bit more than that. But needless to say, diabetes is a serious disease and something of a public health threat. Those of you who are diabetic are obviously familiar with the way that diabetes works, but to make it as simple as I can, people who are diabetic are people who have a consistently elevated level of sugar in their blood. Glucose is the sugar that we carry in our blood, and people who are diabetic walk around with an elevated level of sugar in their blood. The reason that they do so is because the diabetics, people who have diabetes, don't have the ability to make insulin. And insulin is the hormone in the body that controls blood sugar. So people who don't have diabetes are able to produce insulin. Their pancreas is able to produce insulin. And through a very complicated monitoring system, the body is able to control the level of blood sugar through the amount of insulin that's secreted into the bloodstream. People who are diabetic obviously don't have that mechanism, and so they walk around, if they're not treated, with an elevated blood sugar. And so what happens over time is that with your body being consistently exposed to a high level of blood sugar, it begins to affect all the organs in your body. The human body is like anything else. It is analogous to a machine. It's analogous to a plant. It's analogous to a tree. If the body is not in an environment which is its natural environment, if the organs are not being exposed to the same normal levels of molecules and things in the blood that are present in a normal person, then what happens is the body reacts. So if you were to, by a probably not great analogy, take a very expensive computer and put it in the rainforest, you put it there for a week or two, the computer probably will work well. But if you leave that computer in the rainforest for 6 months, it's probably not going to work as well. It's probably going to have all the little components and the semiconductors and the silicon chips, whatever's in the computer, is going to rust and is going to malfunction because it's not in the same, it's not in its natural environment, it's not in the environment that it's intended to be in. Similarly, if our end organs, if our heart and our kidneys and our brain and our nerves are constantly exposed to an unfriendly environment, and in this case, a high level of sugar, then they're going to see effects over time. Diabetes affects the heart, it affects the blood vessels, it affects the kidneys, it affects the nerves. There's not a single organ system in the body that's not affected by diabetes. And as a result, people who have diabetics, and the diabetes stays for a long time, is with them for a long time, have very, very, very serious side effects. So it's very important not only to manage the diabetes when people have it, but it's equally as important to make sure that you detect the diabetes as early as possible so that you can treat it. And studies have shown, and medicine will tell you, that if you catch it early and you maintain a normal level of blood sugar, or as normal as you can possibly be, through means of medication rather than the body's natural ability to deal with glucose, if you're able to medically manipulate it, and keep those blood sugar levels at a normal level, you will prevent some of the long-term damage that takes place in the body as a result of diabetes. So that's just a little bit about diabetes, but I thought that it would be a little bit of an introduction because one of the programs that the Department of Health is sponsoring, and a very, very important program, is the Diabetes Prevention Program. Michelle, tell us a little bit about the Diabetes Prevention Program.
The Diabetes Prevention Program, yeah. I want to thank you for that great information that you gave out about diabetes. You don't die from diabetes, you die from the complications of diabetes, right, as you were saying. So yeah, it isn't something to put on the back burner. And there's a point where you can have pre-diabetes. And it's amazing that I think I said the statistic was...
No, yeah, my statistics were on the basis... Your statistics are probably a lot more current and a lot more relevant than mine. But
I'm going to say a number. It's 79 million American adults are at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. Okay. Type 2 diabetes, as you said, is when that pancreas is not working, right, and that insulin is not working the way it should.
Right.
So you either have to look at how are we going to change that, and to prevent it, you have this window of opportunity with your pre-diabetes. Your medical care provider may say to you, you have high blood sugar, it's a little high, watch your sweets, but you really have this window of opportunity to change that. Okay. Our diabetes prevention program, it comes from the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, right, has a program out, and we've been trained. 5 of us at the health department have been trained in this program, and we provide this program free of charge to anyone who has this condition, and it can be diagnosed by a few simple things. I just wanted to say our phone number is 845-364-2501. If you have this condition, please call us up. November is Diabetes Awareness Month,
Great.
Along with Thanksgiving. And we have to be thankful that we have this program. So I would say this is our
Of course, you're not open on Thanksgiving, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I'm at my own kitchen cooking. Okay. I actually am working though still.
All right.
So we have
my favorite holiday, by the way.
Yes, that's mine too.
I mean, you can't really beat it. You have, you have all the great food that you can eat. You have family around, and then 12 solid hours of football. So that's my favorite day of the year. I don't know, maybe I'm a little biased.
That's okay, but this is a good opportunity to talk to your family members and friends about being thankful for your health.
And by the way, not to interrupt you, I apologize, but I did want to come back and talk about the food pantry because the Thanksgiving just tipped off my... But let's go back to the diabetes, but it's something that I would like to talk about if we can.
So we look at our risk factors. May I say some of the risk factors?
Yeah.
So
actually, why don't you let me just put this up here. This is a pamphlet put out by the Department of Health called "Could You Be at Risk for Diabetes?" And there's a little test that you can take here. And so let's go ahead and go over that, Michelle. I just wanted to kind of flash the pamphlet there.
Okay, so we have this, and you could also get it on the American Diabetes Association's website.
Okay.
But these are just some of the questions that were asked, and I want to ask. You would ask yourself this: I had a baby weighing 9 pounds at birth. 9 pounds or more at birth, or I was diagnosed having gestational diabetes. And that is a diabetes that you may get when you have when you're pregnant.
So those are questions, and for each question, there's a number of points associated with it. So how many points does that one get?
So that one gets a point of 1.
Okay.
A score of 9 or higher means you're at risk for pre-diabetes.
Okay.
So that's a score of 1. So I hope that they're adding up at home.
Okay.
I have a sister or brother with diabetes.
Right.
That's 1. I have a parent with diabetes. That's another 1. I am overweight, and we have a chart here that would tell you you're overweight. So actually, I'm going to tell you I was 5'5", and I used to be 149 pounds. So I would definitely be at risk because when I was at that weight, I was overweight.
So already
that would be 5 points.
Okay, so you've got 2 family members plus somebody who's had gestational diabetes plus somebody who's overweight. That's already 8 points.
Right, and I said that at risk, that your weight of
at risk,
5 points.
Right.
So if I'm younger than 65 years of age and get little or no exercise in a typical day, and if you're changing channels with your clicker, that's not exercise.
Okay.
And that's 5 points.
Okay.
Or you're between the ages of 45 years and 64 years. That's 5 points.
Okay.
Now here's the whopper. Here is I want to say almost the jackpot.
Right.
I am 65 years of age or older. That's 9 points.
So that puts you at risk for diabetes. So how many people in this country of 300 million people, assuming there's, and I'm guessing about 80 million people under 18, so of our 200 plus million people, how many people do you think are over 65? Would you guess? 50, 60 million, 40 million?
I have to put the baby boomer figure in, and I don't have my...
But whatever. I mean, even if it's between 40 and 70 million, it's a lot of people.
But we said at risk of 79 million American adults are at high risk for developing type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
So these are numbers that they're just astronomical. So if we look at this, our program talks... Our program, we ask you to take this test, but we have many phone calls for people who have an elevated, it's called HbA1c, which is the hemoglobin A1c, and that is an indicator that if it's at a certain number, that you may be at risk for diabetes. And the higher that goes, that can be also, if it gets to a certain point, it can be diabetes.
Okay.
So we want it closer to normal as possible, but if there's that indicator, you have that window of opportunity to make these changes.
Okay.
We have a program, I said at the health department, that we go, it's 16 weeks, so it's an hour of your time.
Okay, so now we're moving from well, this is actually sort of management of your management to prevent to prevent the development of diabetes in people who are at risk.
People who are at risk.
Okay. And now, before we move to the program, just a couple of quick questions.
Okay.
First of all, most importantly, how do people find out about the program? How are they led? How do they come to you?
Well, they can call us up at 845-364-2501 and ask about the diabetes prevention program.
Right.
2, they can go on our website at the health department. It's rocklandhealth.com. No,
.gov.
.gov. Thank you. I was going to make sure I said that. Yes, rocklandgov.com/health.
Okay.
They can. This brochure is at many pharmacies. Ask your doctor about it, your medical care provider. Have you heard about the diabetes prevention program at the health department?
Okay.
And I said the best thing is to do, call us up. And it's free. This is a free program.
Right.
It's not based on income eligibility. It is free. Okay? So we have the classes are up to 18 people.
Okay.
We run them periodically. We have another class starting in November. Then there'll be another one starting in January. We've had people lose 30 pounds. We've had people lose lose that part of that HbA1c has come down. And the best.
Well, the other thing to mention, and if I didn't make this clear, probably the highest risk factor, as you indicated there, for diabetes is obesity. It's the preventable one. I mean, people who have. People who are born with diabetes, people who have juvenile diabetes, obviously...
That's different.
Yeah, you can't, that's sort of, in your genetics, but in patients or in people who are obese, diabetes is very much preventable. And also, if you drop the weight, it drops the risk of your developing diabetes as well as the severity of it. Interestingly, and I think we talked about this last week, from a statistical point of view, there are, as I think I mentioned last time, about a third of Americans are considered to be normal weight, a third of Americans are considered to be somewhat overweight, and then a full third of Americans are considered to be actually obese. And we're talking about 70 to 80 million people.
Well, almost 70% of Americans are overweight, and that includes obesity.
Okay.
So that's really.
It's a lot of people.
2/3 of this country is either, it's 69%, and these numbers are from the Centers of Disease Control. I'm not making these up.
And another interesting statistic is that something like, I think it's $200 billion are directly, $200 billion of our healthcare dollars are directly attributable to people with obesity and the complications and the care required to take care of that, which is absolutely and completely preventable with some attention to your diet and exercise and that sort of thing. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but let's go back and talk about the management program. I just thought we kind of mentioned obesity because it sort of does figure right into it,
This program, the great thing about this is that the studies have shown that if you take this class, that you can prevent diabetes up to, and now they're finding, I think it's 15 years, but it was 9 years that you did not have to, that you may not develop diabetes. Okay. So that is 9 years.
So it pushes it off for 9 years.
And then now the new study that just came out in June, it said it could be up to 15 years.
Really?
So looking at that, we ask you that the mainstay of this program is looking at your fat calories. Okay. And the other piece is asking that you look at your physical activity.
Okay. You have a sheet there, right?
Yes.
Let's take a look, because we can go through that sheet, Michelle.
Oh, this is for our diabetes chronic disease management.
Okay.
So this is a little different.
We'll come to that a little bit.
But what we do is in those 16 weeks, so we have 16 weeks, and it's a real lifestyle change, because remember I said about diet, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change. Right. And you're looking at your lifestyle. So and then after that we have maintenance. It's once a month for 6 months. Okay. So we don't leave you high and dry, we're there with you. And we are lifestyle coaches, we're trained in this. So that is the program I was talking about when you're going out to eat, because we look at every aspect. We look at how to speak to your spouse about this, how to look at your environment and look at how I can change the environment at my home. How do I also manage the self-doubt talk that sometimes can happen? I can't do this, I don't know if I could do this. How do we look at that? How do we look at problem situations? How do we look at holidays? How do we look at Thanksgiving and what's going to come up? How do I speak to my family about this? How am I going to manage to fit physical activity in when I can't fit one more thing in my life? So we work that through. It is also a group dynamic. We start with a group of about 18, and that group dynamic works because they learn from each other. And that is powerful, very powerful.
Looking at the people who've been in the program, looking at the history of people who've gone through it, who've participated in it, those who succeed and are able to manage themselves over the long term, is there any one particular item, any one particular factor that stands out? Is it their support system? Is it their bringing up, is it they're developing an exercise plan that they stick with? Is it their self-image? Is it their confidence? Is there any particular factor that seems to be most important in their success? And also, by the same token, is there any particular factor that seems to be in play when those people don't succeed and they fail?
We only had one. We've actually just finished our second class. Okay. So we started this September of 2013.
Okay.
And it did run a whole year, so we just finished one, and then the second class is just finishing now. Something is that created an awareness. That's what many of them said, because they've been through weight loss programs before.
Right.
But having them write down what they eat.
Okay.
Having them to look up calories, to look up fat grams.
Okay.
Looking at some of the pieces of portion control.
Mm-hmm.
It's accountability. And I think that was a real opener, is the awareness piece.
Okay.
Because some of the programs they've been on before didn't have to do that. But that awareness piece of what they were putting into their mouth because they had to write it down.
Right.
That was one. And the other thing is the physical activity. We asked for 150 minutes, and some people said, well, I don't know if I could fit this in, but they looked at it.
150 minutes a week.
A week.
So that's 2.5 hours a week of, obviously, cardiovascular activity.
The most important thing we said to move, but some of them,
okay.
remember, we go with you through the year.
Right.
So yes, it's easy to walk outside now,
right.
but I may not be able to do that physical activity in 2 months because it's
right.
too cold. So how am I going to do that? So that group dynamic of working with each other, some of them found that there are pools that they could join. Some of them started water aerobics. Some of them looked at different areas of the county where they can walk, that during the day they could walk, that it was warmer during the day. They were talking about Congers Lake, looking at also Rockland Lake has 3.2 miles, looking at some of the free resources that we have in the county there's a lot of walking paths.
Right.
Some of them spoke about looking at some of the school districts that open up the schools at night for physical activity.
Yeah, you had mentioned that. I remember that when I was I was in Florida for a while, and they'd open up the malls at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there would be, an onslaught of senior citizens in their jumpsuits or warm-up suits. I mean, hundreds of them walking around the mall and walking very fast around. Of course, this is Florida, where you can really walk outside in the winter or the summer.
It's air conditioned of the mall.
But it's air conditioned. But the other thing that I thought was even more important was that they had their friends with them. So this was like a social thing. They'd get together, at 8 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning. There wouldn't be a store open in the mall, but they'd go and they would just, walk. They weren't quite running, but they were walking pretty vigorously for an hour and an hour and a half. And there's people who did this every morning, and these people were in the most incredible shape, which I think, is sort of it's an interesting intersection of sort of public service, health awareness, and business, because obviously, it cost them a little bit to keep them all open in the morning, but the businesses probably were very much in favor of it, and I just thought it was a nice sort of public. I mean, I know they do this all over the country, but I hadn't never seen it before. By the same token, I'm sure that in the wintertime here in Rockland, there is opportunity to do that sort of thing, right?
And as I said, some of them found out through each other, through the groups, that one of them was doing a Zumba class at one of the local schools,
right.
And one of them said that they had a pool, that they were going to one of the pools. Somebody else said, yes, they were using the mall at the Palisades Center. These were things that, well, I don't know if I can do it, but maybe I can. You're doing it, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
That was very powerful. So that group dynamic that they got from each other,
which I think is to your point, I think that having them in that group, having them follow the course together, it gives them sort of a support system. So even if they don't have that support system at home, which they very well may not have, at least they've got a support system within their group that they can work with. And my guess would be that would be a very important motivational factor, and probably leads to a great deal of success if they're able to keep that support group up,
Yes, because the support that they got from each other when you have them come in once a week, and they would say, well, how'd you do with this? And how'd you do with that? And
sure.
that's important. Somebody was going to Israel, and she was very worried. How was she going to maintain eating healthy? And somebody else had said, what are you talking about, Israel? And somebody else had been to Israel, and they were able to explain to her that you could do this. And then somebody else was going away for the holidays. They were going to Florida. How were they going to maintain this? They were seeing relatives, and how were they going to explain to their relatives their new lifestyle? They helped each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes letting that happen is very hard for someone like me who likes to do a lot of talking, but they did it themselves.
But it also changes your role in the group, because you become less of an instructor, less of a scientist, less of an expert,
more of a facilitator,
and more of a motivator kind of facilitator. So it brings a whole different dimension, and probably so it's all different kinds of skills involved in developing this, But I think that it's an important paradigm, because, and we're going to come back in just a minute, and we're going to talk about the chronic self-management program for chronic diseases. I do think that, and for a number of reasons, this is very much where we're starting to look at in terms of healthcare, not necessarily globally, but in terms of healthcare trends in our country. So I think that it's a nice example to talk about this. Anyway, let's take a little break here, Michelle. We've spoken quite a bit about diabetes, and very interesting to learn what the Department of Health is doing, and I would imagine departments of health across the country are doing to increase awareness of diabetes and help people to manage themselves in the pre-diabetic phase, and also in the diabetic phase, because it is over time a devastating disease, not only a costly disease to our society, but costly in terms of your own personal health as well. We'll be back in just a few minutes with Healthcare and Beyond. Welcome back to Healthcare and Beyond. We're having a very interesting conversation with Michelle about diabetes, about nutrition, but the next thing we're going to talk about is disease management. Chronic diseases are common. They're part of our general health when we get older. Some of us develop chronic diseases, some more than others. But invariably, as people do age, they do develop different conditions, heart conditions, lung conditions. And to a large extent now, there's been a shift in focus in the health community, I guess, in the way that we look at diseases. We have gotten, in medicine, fairly good at managing medical conditions. We've gotten fairly good at managing heart disease. We've got fairly good at managing heart failure, lung disease, certainly tremendous strides in the way that we've been able to manage cancer. But as a result of that, I think, and quite rightly, there's become an awareness and a shift, not so much towards treating the diseases as such, but towards preventing the diseases. And in fact, if you look at it from a strictly cost perspective, it behooves us, and it certainly is in our best interest to try and catch these diseases early on, manage them aggressively early on, so that later on down the line, not only do you improve the quality of people's lives by helping them to limit the incidence and severity of these diseases, but you also help our federal pocketbook as well, because the cost of taking care of people with chronic diseases can be quite significant. So today we're going to touch a little bit on chronic disease, and there's a very, very interesting program that I just learned about through the Department of Health. It's a program which came out of Stanford called the Chronic Disease Self-Management Program. And I'd like to ask Michelle to talk a little bit about this. Michelle, this is a very exciting program. And I think in the long run, it's going to be something that's going to have a pretty significant and a very beneficial effect on our health and certainly on our economy. Tell us a little bit about the self-management program, the Chronic Disease Self-Management Program.
We have two programs. So we talked a little bit about our diabetes prevention program, but what happens if you do have diabetes?
Right.
So we have two programs. One is the Diabetes Self-Management Program, right, and the other is the Chronic Disease Self-Management Program. So they're two separate programs. One is obviously focused on diabetes, right, and the other is focused on chronic disease. Now, what is chronic disease? You could have arthritis, you could have high blood pressure, you could have heart disease. These are some of the diseases that affect some of us day to day.
Right.
Especially, I wouldn't say arthritis. So how am I going to wake up every morning? I have arthritis or I have high blood pressure. Right. And what are the steps to take to manage this? Okay. I like what you had said before about medicine. I think sometimes we looked at any chronic disease as just taking medicine and what else can be done. Well, that really wasn't the focus of it here.
Right,
take this, whatever medicine it is, I'm not going to say the names, but take this and take 2 of these and we'll see you in 6 months.
Call me in the morning.
Yeah,
Don't call me this morning.
No.
Call me in 6 months.
In 6
See
months.
how the language of medicine has changed? Usually take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning.
Yes, that's what it used to be, right?
But now it's something else, and schedule an appointment with my office for 6 months from now. Depending on your insurance plan.
Right, and depending on your insurance plan. Yeah. This is not based on insurance plan. Anybody could take this. It's again, it's not income eligible, or I make too much money, I can't take that class. Anybody could take this class, or I don't make enough money. How am I going to get there? We will work it out. Right. And we look at, how am I going to manage this? How am I going to speak to my doctor about my disease? Right. Because maybe that doctor we talked before, you know what healthcare is like. I only have 7 minutes to speak to somebody, and do I want to listen to them? Here, take these, write the prescription, goodbye. Well, how do I take this prescription? Right. We work on how to speak to your healthcare provider, I said, take action, get more out of life. We talk about an action plan. We work in this class to develop an action plan. Studies have shown that if you write something down, you're more apt to do it. Because I could talk to you and you say, oh, that's a good idea, but I'm actually writing this down. What are the steps that I have to take to get to that goal? So this class is also goal-orientated, that we look at what our goal is. Okay. We draw an action plan. We also give that participant a toolbox. And I just wanted to show a little bit about the toolbox. These are some of the things that we cover. Some people have a hard time making a decision. Right. And we talk about pieces on decision-making.
Can we, or just is, yeah. Okay.
So these are some of the things we talk about. Weight management, we talk about understanding your emotions. Okay. Sometimes I may get very upset that you're telling me I have to take a different medication. Look, doctor, I've been on this medication for 20 years. I'm not taking a new one. What are the side effects? And I get very upset. Okay. So how am I going to understand what these emotions are? Okay. Sometimes when your emotion, that could raise your blood sugar. That could get your blood pressure higher. How am I going to manage these emotions? So these are some of the things we talk about. This is something I believe it's just emerging now, how important sleep is. So we talk about that. Okay. Communication, how am I going to express what I need to express to my spouse? Right. To my family who makes my meals for me, that they really need to do it this way without the adobo that they keep putting on everything. Okay. How am I going to explain that to them? Okay. So these are some of the tools that we give you in that toolbox, how to do that. This program meets for 6 weeks. 2.5 hours.
Wow, wow.
Wow. However, that's that time it takes, and you really go through this and learn, and giving you that tools on how to use what you're learning.
Let me take a look at this for a second, Michelle. I want to point out something here that's interesting that we sort of talked about.
Oh, I did on there so it keeps it hard.
This is good. This is, I can't really fold it up and put it in my pocket.
Well, if you want to, you can take home that.
Now I'm going to take a picture on my phone. But this is great. But I do want to make a point here, and it's an important point. Taking care of yourself involves taking medication, but it's only a small piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. Right? There are a whole dimension of things that you can do. There's a whole series of things that come into your place. I mean, you just don't get up in the morning, take medicine, and go to bed. I mean, there are more things that you do in the course of a day.
There's many people who do that.
But that's fine. Yeah, I mean, maybe at some point I'll end up doing that. It's not right now. But there's a whole host of things that you do. Now, some of those things that you do are healthcare related. So some of them may be, going to the doctor, or going to the pharmacy, or doing things that are directly involved in that medication, or going to physical therapy or whatever. So you sort of have your taking medication component, you have your sort of support activities that are involved with that, but then you have this whole bunch of lifestyle activities, and it's really a combination of all those three things. It's not only having the prescription and seeing the doctor, it's getting to the doctor, taking the medicine when you're supposed to take it, in the right dose, getting to that physical therapy, but it's also managing your life. And all these other things make a big difference, physical activity, support system, weight management, problem solving, sleep. I mean, all these things involve your entire life. So it really becomes a complete transformation in the way that you are. But taking care of yourself is not just taking medicine. And I think that's sort of the take-home message from this. This teaches you how to live your life in a way that will improve your chronic diseases, medication notwithstanding. And so for that reason, I think it's a very important thing, but I also think it probably requires an awful lot of discipline, and an awful lot of, effort initially to sort of, to make it an effective program for somebody if they're going to, be able to be successful.
It should go hand in hand with your medication.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, here's your medication, goodbye.
Right.
It should be, okay, this is the role that the medication plays.
Right.
This is the role that I need you to look at.
Yeah.
As the patient. The patient, how can I help myself?
Right.
So this is, we run these programs, I want to say you can call the health department, and we have them ongoing throughout the year.
Yeah.
But it is 6 weeks, which is fantastic because the same thing happens. You get that core group of people getting to learn and getting to know each other.
Right.
And it's led by 2 coaches who've been trained through the Stanford method.
Okay.
And it's the phone number is the same, 364-2501 or 2500. And we'd be happy to have more people, to have more classes filled.
Now, so there's the phone number that you mentioned, and the
our website, which is www.rocklandgov.com/health.
Okay.
And I said the easiest way is to call us up, 364-2500, 364-2501.
Okay.
We have that phone is on. You can always leave a message. However, we are there from 9 to 5 p.m. Somebody is answering the phone.
Now,
we also have them at different areas of the county.
Okay.
So it's not just at Pomona, that's where our office is located.
Right.
However, we're in libraries. We just finished one at the Nanuet Library.
Okay.
We have them at different times during the day. We're at the Garnerville King's Daughters Library during the day. Some of us have programs at night because we have to serve the whole county. And some people, if you're working during the day, you're not going to have time to come to a class during the day. So we have these after 5.
Are doctors' offices in the county aware of these programs, so you could speak to somebody at the office and get a referral here?
You don't need a referral?
I mean,
well, yes, they are in some of the doctor's office.
Okay.
That's where we have been promoting them.
Okay.
However, we've promoted them in some of the school districts. We're looking at on our website. We would love, if you're watching this and you have a chronic disease, call us. If you know of someone else who has a chronic disease, your BFF, right? Your best friend, your spouse, call us, and we will help. Enroll in our program.
Interesting. It's I think one of the and we've been, we've had a couple of sessions here, Michelle, with the Department of Health. I think that it's been very enlightening to me, and it's been real education understanding all the different things that the local Department of Health does. I think as doctors, we're aware, as physicians, we're aware of the efforts of the federal government in healthcare. We're aware of all the regulatory agencies. I think to a large extent everybody's aware of Obamacare, which takes place at both a sort of a federal and a state level. But I think that the work that the local health departments do, really reaching out to the population and try to make an important difference in the lives of people in sort of a very day-to-day way, but in a very meaningful way, has been really an education for me, And I'm glad that we had the chance to talk to you guys. I think hopefully I'd like to circle back around sometime maybe next year and just talk about how these programs have developed, and the success that you've had. But I expect that you'll have a lot of success, because these seem to be really the kinds of things that we need, in order to create a healthier population. And again, looking at it from a financial perspective, to try and shrink some of this massive, healthcare bill that we really don't need to have. If we were able to bring the level of our health up a little bit more, Michelle,
Making the healthy choice the easy choice. That's what
I do. I want to thank Michelle for coming on the show with us. I also would like to thank Dee, our producer, who I don't think I've ever had a chance to thank on the air. So Dee LaPlante, our producer. Thank you, Dee. We'll be back. We'll be back next week. We have some interesting guests coming to the show. I believe we will be having somebody from the state come and talk to us, and we're going to talk a little bit about healthcare at the state level. The show is called Healthcare and Beyond, and so far we've been focusing on healthcare. We will eventually get to some of the beyond at some point, and there's some other interesting things on the way. But in any event, thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. Larry Rosenberg. You're watching Healthcare, or have been watching Healthcare and Beyond, and I appreciate, and we will see you soon. Thank you.